So while we wait,
There's everybody.
Julie's there. Yay. Julie, will you make me a host, co-host, so I can?
Yes, I will. Okay.
We have a number 510-524-7191.
That's Adele.
Adele, great.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for being here with us.
Julie, I'm not the co-host. You made Karen Elshore the co-host.
Really?
Thanks, Karen.
Oh, Karen's name is right next to yours. It must have jiggled. My cursor is very jumpy. Okay, now we did that. Now co-host successfully.
Yes, you did. And who is at the 818 number?
This is Ben Ginsberg.
Thank you.
Well, this is a great and punctual group. It looks like there are about, well, I think there are 17 of us on, and I think, 18. I think we're just expecting about 4 more. I think we should start. Let's be punctual, and thank you everyone for being punctual and for joining us for the Issue Research Team training webinar. This is actually, it's not our first year of having issue research teams, but it is our first year of having a training webinar. And we are excited about the work that the issue research teams have done and excited to just build on that. So I'm looking at all of your faces and seeing people who have been on these teams already, people who are new to the teams, people who have been involved in other aspects of RAC California, but are now joining this aspect. So that's super exciting. And I want to invite everybody to just really briefly say your name, what congregation, and tell us the location of your congregation and which issue research team you are on. And maybe if you want to just say continuing on that team or new to that team. So we'll go, I'll just say your first names, and we'll go in the order that I can see you. Okay, so Harry.
Hi, I'm Harry Sherman. I am from Temple, Judea in Tarzana, California, and I will be on the Homeless and Housing Committee.
Terrific. Bob. Oh, and you have to unmute yourself to speak.
Hi, this is Bob Kibrick. I'm with Temple Bethel in Aptos, California, and I'm continuing the climate action team.
Thanks. Continuing.
Yes.
Debbie?
Hi, I'm Debbie Coutant from Congregation Shiradash in Los Gatos, California, and I'm continuing on the immigration team.
Thank you. Okay, my next person is our legislative assistant, Jacob.
Hey everyone, I'm Jacob. I'm a legislative assistant at the RAC based in Washington, D.C., originally from Temple Bethel in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'll be helping staff the healthcare team.
And thank you for doing this with us at 10 o'clock at night, Jacob.
No worries.
Helene.
I'm Helene Jaffa from Temple Akiba in Culver City, and I'm on the Criminal Justice Research Group.
Thank you. Bill.
Bill Shore, Congregation Sheriff Israel, San Francisco, and I'm new to the health group.
But not new to healthcare.
No, not new to healthcare. Not at all. Very much strong proponent of single payer. So, yes.
Okay. Dan.
Dan Siegel, Temple Bethel, Riverside. I'm interested in homelessness.
Thank you so much. And Dan Strauss.
Dan Strauss, Temple Bethel, Riverside. I'm continuing on the healthcare team.
Thank you for the role you've played. Yeah. Rose.
So I'm Rose Ashford from Temple Bethel in Aptos, along with Bob Kibrick And last year I was on the criminal justice team, although I wasn't able to do a whole lot.
Welcome back. Kathy Chapin.
Hi, Kathy Chapin, Beth Judea. I haven't done this before, and my primary interest is healthcare, but I need to.
I don't know if it's just me, but having trouble hearing you, Kathy. Kathy, would you just...
Your internet went out, Kathy.
Yeah, we couldn't hear you. So we got Beth Israel Judea in San Francisco, and that your primary interest is healthcare, but?
I'm trying to find out more of what is expected because I'm not an expert in healthcare.
Great, perfect. These teams are and will be experts in
a different way,
as well as non-experts who are bringing excitement and willingness to do the work of learning about what bills are opportunities. What are the opportunities for us? So we don't need everyone to be issue experts. Karen. You have to unmute yourself, Karen. Yeah.
Karen, muted.
Can't hear you. Uh-oh, we still can't hear you. Karen, if your sound doesn't come on, what you could do is you could type in the chat. You could type your introduction in the chat. I'm sorry we can't hear you. Okay, I could jump in and introduce my friend Karen Alschuler, who's from Sheriff Israel in San Francisco, and who's been very involved in leading at her congregation, but is new to the issue research teams. And I think you're probably on the immigrant rights team. Is that right, Karen? Okay. Judy, on the phone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Judy Burlfine. I'm from Temple Solel in Cardiff/Encinitas near San Diego, and I'm continuing on the climate research team.
Terrific. So glad to have you.
You are in the meeting now. There are 18 parts.
Kathy?
Kathy? Yes, I am. I will mute myself. Yes, I am. I will mute myself.
What?
Kathy,
I am on the phone now, and I'll
mute myself because the Zoom thing is not working very well for me. Sorry.
Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, again. So I'm Kathy Chapin.
And I am with Beth Israel.
Yeah,
I'm going to get out of the Zoom thing. I'm
okay,
going to get out of it.
We did get your introduction, Kathy. I was talking about Kathy Penso. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Who have we missed? Ben?
Hi, Ben Ginsberg. I'm a rabbi's kid. I'm a member at Congregation Orami in Calabasas, California. And I was invited to participate on the gun violence prevention research team.
Fantastic. Great for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Did we hear from so people, you need to mute yourselves so that we don't get that kind of feedback. Thank you.
Put the mute. I don't want to mute. You have to put the mute on. You do?
Adele? Amadeo?
Yeah. Yes. Hi. I'm Adele Amadeo from Congregation Bethel in Berkeley. I'm a returning member of the healthcare research team.
Terrific. Is there anyone on the phone or anyone else that we didn't hear from?
Just turn the mute on.
I don't know how.
You just do it.
I think if you're on the phone, it may be *6 or just the mute button on the screen of your iPhone or what kind of phone you have. So thank you, everybody. Here's what we're going to do in this call. We're going to, after just a little more introductory remarks, we're going to talk about the purpose and the role of the research teams. We're going to talk about the actual research that we do, and then we're going to, we need you to mute yourselves. We're going to talk about how the issue research teams help the congregations to take action, right? So the action that we take is dependent on the work of the research team to find the opportunities and to track those opportunities and to activate the congregations. Let's see, most people are muted, but a couple of them are not muted, and we're getting a lot of background noise. So let me just ask everyone to mute yourselves unless you are participating in questions or discussion. Thank you. So I want to just really quickly bring a text that you may be familiar with. It's a pretty often quoted Jewish text. Rabbi Tarfon and the rabbinic elders were dining, and it was asked of them, which is greater, study or the performance of deeds? Rabbi Tarfon said, deeds are greater. Rabbi Akiva said, study is greater. All of the sages present said, study is greater because it leads to action, right? So that was a great Jewish answer, right? You're given two choices, and the answer is, I'll pick this one because it leads to the other. But I have to say that although this is very often quoted, the teaching has always bothered me. And recently I thought about and what bothered me is that it leaves the key to the key of the whole issue, it leaves it implied instead of spoken. And what it's saying is that if study is important because it leads to action, well, isn't it really just saying that action is more important? And I think what it doesn't spell out for us is that what they're trying to teach is that action is really important, but if it's not informed by study or by what we're going to be talking about tonight, by research, which is a kind of study, then the action may not be so wise. And the purpose of our issue research teams is to allow us to take wise, considered, informed action together. So I really thank you for being part of the work of RAC California, which is to make sure that we take wise, considered, informed action together. And with that, thank you for being our partners. And I'm going to hand it over to Jacob for a bit to begin the next section.
But before Jacob does, I just want to say one thing.
Oh, I didn't have Lee introduce yourself.
Well, I'll introduce myself when I speak. Hi, everybody. I'm Lee Winkleman, the Southern California organizer for the RAC. I just want to just make sure that you know that we have a lot of information to give you, but we encourage you to interrupt with questions or thoughts or comments as we go forward so that we make this as much dialogue as possible.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Jacob.
Thank you so much, Julie and Lee. While I'm thinking about it, just one note about questions. Again, feel free to interrupt, but once you're done asking your question, please make sure that you mute yourself again. So I'll provide an overview of the purpose and role of issue research teams and sort of talk about how they fit into the broader RAC California framework. So there are four main things that issue research teams do. The first is to identify bills and ballot measures that RAC California can work on. The second is to stay in touch with allied groups on whatever issue your research team is focusing on. So for example, on the healthcare research team, we'll be working with Health Access California. Some of you might be working with groups such as PICO California. The third role of issue research teams is to identify actions that congregations can take to advance the bills and ballot measures in their issue areas. And the last part, which sort of ties into that third point, is to help reach out to appropriate congregations about the actions that the congregations can take. So as a whole, you'll see that issue research teams are one piece of RAC California's larger effort to build power to bring about the California of our dreams. So it's working as an issue research team with our allied partners and also figuring out how we can mobilize congregations writ large. So issue research teams are not independent groups devoted to advancing an issue. Again, they're part of building RAC California as a strong organization. Another point to note is that all issue research teams are temporary, and that RAC California might dissolve issue research teams or create new ones as the political reality in California changes and as the concerns of RAC California and California Reform Jews across the state change. So we are really trying to adapt to the political climate and to the realities of what our congregations might be interested in or might be facing. Are there any questions thus far? Okay, so then a little bit about what issue research teams don't really focus on, or what they might not have the power to do. Number one is issue research teams won't be making the final decision about which bills and ballot measures RAC California supports. The structure of RAC California is such that those decisions would fall to the leadership team. So issue research teams can absolutely inform the leadership team, make recommendations, give their own input and thoughts, but they won't be the final decision-making body simply because they're just one part of our organization. Issue research teams are also not responsible for advocating for the bills and ballot measures themselves. That's something that we really want the congregational social justice teams to do. And the issue research teams help move those congregations into action within the larger framework of our strategy and communications plan. Similarly, issue research teams are also not responsible for making final decisions on strategy for bills or ballot measures. Our strategies for bills and ballot measures will want to be integrated into an overall strategy rather than having 6 independent strategies with 6 independent research groups. And so again, while the issue research groups will play a role in developing the strategy for bills and ballot measures, we rely on the leadership team to coordinate, and the leadership team would have the final say. And so that's sort of an overview of the role and purpose of research teams. And again, if anybody has questions, feel free to jump in.
Yeah,
I have a question.
Quick question. The leadership team, besides Julie and Lee, who are also on the leadership team?
So that's comprised of representatives from congregations across the state. Lee and Julie, if you want to jump in.
Yeah,
here.
Julie and I are not on the leadership team. We're the staff. So it is rabbis and lay leaders from around the state who are on the team.
And are there other questions?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I have a question. Yeah, this is Ben Ginsberg. So just so I'm clear, the issue research teams are not responsible for those final decisions on strategy and advocacy, but there's nothing preventing us as individuals from pursuing advocacy on our own time, correct?
Not at all. Nothing at all.
Okay, thank you.
Many, if not most, of the people on this call do that, including Julie and I.
Absolutely. And we do it in a more informed way because of the work of the teams.
This is Judy. I have a question. So someone asked about the leadership team, and you said it's rabbis and lay leaders. Is that change every year, or is that published somewhere? Or is there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it seems like we should make a list that is available so that everyone could see who is the team. And we actually don't, I think because we're just one page among many on the RAC website, we haven't done that. But Lee, why don't we make a note and find a way to make that easy to access?
Great. Well, we'll put it on the website. There's usually, usually a couple people drop off and a couple new people. So there's some turnover, but it's not like a new body every year. There's a lot of continuity also.
This is Bob. Quick question. How often does the leadership team meet? Do they do Zoom sessions? What's sort of their process for arriving at decisions?
Leadership team meets monthly, and then at additional times when needed. And members of the leadership team, in addition to meeting monthly, take on tasks sometimes helping to lead webinars such as this one. That didn't happen this time, but in general, members of the leadership team will help us do things like design what's going to happen at our regional gatherings, think through the agenda of our lobby day, or other activities that we do.
So specifically the question of which bills we take up, the issue research teams have a lot of influence because they're the experts. They, even if you weren't the expert before we started the process, by the time you do the research meetings that we're going to talk about, you will be the experts in making recommendations. So the recommendations of the issue research teams carry a lot of weight. And then the leadership team kind of takes the recommendations and puts them into a package, and with some options that are presented to webinars with lay leaders from congregations. So the leaders of congregational social justice teams around the state will weigh in on which of the bills that the issue research team has uncovered are the ones they most want to work on, right? And then what the leadership team does is it takes that information and from that will form the agenda. So it's not sort of like what the leadership team's pet projects are. It's like the leadership team is overseeing a process that involves the research of the issue teams and what the people in the congregations care about.
If we don't have more questions on that process at this point, let's move to the actual research process. And Lee, do you want to start us off on that section? Nope, Lee, you're muted.
I think Karen has a question. I may have unmuted you, Karen. Did you call in, Karen?
No, let's see.
No.
Yeah, it does say.
You have to use the phone, Karen. You have to use the phone audio. So you have to call in, which is on the bottom.
She tried to do that, and somehow it's not working. So I don't know what's not working about both situations, Karen. We can see you. And if you want to ask a question or make a comment, why don't you chat it? Why don't you put it in the chat? Okay, I'm sort of reading your lips. I think you said I'm going to do that. Thanks, Karen. We will come back and address whatever you have typed in the chat, Karen. Lee, do you want to go ahead with issue research teams and the research process?
Okay. So you heard a little bit about sort of what the structure of RAC California is. We have a leadership team that is rabbis and lay leaders from around the state. And then we have the issue research teams that do a lot of research. And then we go back to the leaders of congregational teams who have a lot of influence into what we do. And the issue research teams really have, as Jacob said, the issue teams, research teams have two roles. Really, the first is researching and identifying possible bills and ballot measures we can take up. And the second is to identify, once we choose our agenda for the year, to identify what the actions congregations can take and to help reach out to congregations to take those actions. So first, we're going to divide these up. And first, we're going to talk about how do we research what the bills are that we want to take up. So what are the RAC California's plan this year is we have 6 issue areas and 1 research team for each issue area. And that is, so we have housing, housing and homelessness, healthcare, immigration, criminal justice, gun violence, and climate change. Got them all, yay. And so we are going to choose 1 bill from each area. The ballot measures are mostly in even numbered years unless the legislature puts something on. Hey, Julie, you need headphones because you're getting a lot of background noise there. We're going to pick one bill from each issue area. And then we're going to pick one of those 6 bills to be our central priority. And it'll be our central priority based on what our congregations are most excited about working on. So we will work on all of them, and when we get to the how we move people to action, we'll talk a little bit about how we move into action differently from our central bill to our other bills. But right now we want to talk about the research. So first thing to talk about in the research is what is the criteria for choosing a bill? Like there are a lot of bills in each of our issue areas, way more than we could ever support. And we don't want to just sign up for every bill, even every good bill, because it would dilute our force, right? Our congregations need focus. If we give them 12 bills, they're likely to do nothing. If we give them one bill, then they're more likely to take action. And the same thing is, if we have a lot of people acting on one bill, we will have more impact than if we have a few people acting on a lot of bills. So that's why we're trying to focus our agenda, choose one bill, even, which is going to be hard because in a lot of our areas, there are a lot of good bills. So this is how we're going to tell the criteria for the bill that we want to pick up. So the first thing is we want a bill with a strong partner group, right? We know that we alone cannot pass a bill, that we need to have a strong partner group. So, you know, we know that, for example, in healthcare, Health Access California is a really strong partner group. So the fact that they're making it a priority is one thing that would be something that would indicate to us that that should be a priority, because they're really smart, good, very experienced in healthcare, and we know that it'll be a big coalition effort. We have groups like that in all or almost all of our areas. So that's what we want to look for. The second thing is we want a bill that we can make a difference on, right? So if there's a bill that's a slam dunk and it's going to pass, even if we did nothing, that's not a bill we want to take up. I mean, it's like padding our resume that we endorsed, that we worked on a bill that passed, but we don't want to do that. We want a bill that we can make a difference. And on the opposite end, if it's a bill that there's no way that's going to pass no matter what we do, that's not a good bill either. What we're looking for is a bill that has a chance of passing, but it's not sure, and our participation could really make a difference. The third thing is we want a bill that not only helps people, but that's a game changer, right? We want to change the whole narrative about how we talk about an issue, or change the power structure, or make such a big change that it makes a really huge difference. For example, we don't want to choose a bill that just helps a few homeless families. I mean, that's good and important. We want a bill that's going to change homelessness, or at least take a step in that direction, ideally, or change the housing affordability crisis. So those are the kind of things we're looking for, bills that are game changers. The next thing is we want it to be exciting, an exciting bill. And so the first thing is it should be exciting to the leadership. So if your issue research team is not excited about it, then you're not going to be motivated to work on it. So it should be exciting to you. And we want it to be exciting to our base, which is the people in our congregations. And we can guess at that, but mostly we want to look for, we'll use the webinars that we're holding at the end of February and the beginning of March, where the congregations come on and say how excited they are, and that will help us figure that out. The next criteria is that it can't be polarizing, right? Now, we're Jews, so we're never going to all agree on anything, at least nothing worth doing. So we're not saying there has to be unanimous support. But what we're saying is if something people feel so strongly, and there's a sizable minority of people that feel so strongly about it that it would call into question whether they want to be involved in their congregation, that's not a good issue for us to take up. So we're going to look for things that can bring a lot of people together and not polarize. I have three more. We want a bill that builds our power and leaves us in a stronger position to take more impactful actions in the future, right? If we have a lot of effort and a lot of force and we develop relationships with elected officials, then next time we'll be able to go back to those people and those elected officials. So we'll have increased our ability to have influence in the future. And then the last two are, it has to be in accordance with Jewish values. And more specifically, it has to be in accordance with the resolutions that have been passed by the Union for Reform Judaism at its biennial. We're part of the Reform movement, and we only take on issues that the Reform movement has agreed are important and priority issues through a democratic process. So the good news is there are a lot of resolutions the URJ has passed, and we've never had a situation where we wanted to work on an issue and there had been no resolutions. But it could come up sometime, and so we always make sure that we are part of the Reform movement. And that's really important to a lot of our rabbis who feel like they get a lot of cover to go to their congregation when they might have critics who say, you shouldn't be taking stands, and they can go and say, well, this is something the Reform movement has passed and voted on. So it gives a lot of legitimacy to what we do. So those are the criteria. I don't know if anyone has any questions or thoughts or comments on that.
I have just a brief comment.
Great, go ahead,
sorry, yes, thank you. So speaking on the gun violence prevention research team, there is very little about the gun violence policy debate that is not polarizing.
You know, it's not hugely polarizing in our congregation. I mean, it's polarizing out in the world. But our congregations, not everybody, but a pretty heavy majority are really horrified and saddened by gun violence and want to take, sensible measures to change that. So we have not had pushback from the other gun violence bills in the past that we've taken up. They have not been polarized.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that we're all setting ourselves up for success.
I have a question.
Great, go ahead. Go ahead.
A reform bill that at the last minute was changed as it was passed, and I'm wondering, what is it that we can do to try to prevent that from happening in the future, that we spend all this effort on a bill and then in the end, we no longer support it after all the work.
Great question, Harry. I think I'd like to address that when we come to the taking action part of the webinar. So if I forget to do it, will you remind me, Harry? Okay. Karen,
yes, I will.
Karen Alschuler, who is involuntarily muted, asks us, are there others on my research team in addition to me? And is there a leadership person focused on immigration specifically? So the leadership teams are in various states, and some of them have been going strong for a year or a little more than a year, and some of them are really just getting going. So each leadership team will have a chair or co-chairs and has multiple members. Now, some of them, we know who those chairs are and can tell you, and some of them that is still to be determined. I don't want to, the immigration, it has had chairs, and I think we are still in conversation about whether the chairs are going to continue in that role, so I don't want to speak to that, unless, Julie, you know more information than me.
No, we're still in conversation, but there are a good number of people in to be on the team.
Right.
Thanks for the question, Karen. And I think we could say if somebody on this call is interested in being a co-chair of a team, that you should be in touch with me or Lee to find out if we have chairs or if we're looking for somebody and what it takes to do that job. Thanks for the question. So for the criteria, Lee, do you want to continue or do you want me to pick up a little?
Why don't you take over?
Okay. So those were the criteria, and we will find a way to publish, to send to everybody on the teams that list of criteria that Lee just went over. Because I think those are really important for everybody to have in front of you as you prepare to do the work. The purpose of the research is to find bills and measures that meet those criteria. And we may or may not find a perfect bill that meets all of those criteria, but we're looking for a top priority bill that has the best combination of high ratings on all of those criteria. Another purpose of the work of the research teams is to develop shared knowledge and confidence and relationships with our allies. So we're not looking for just one person on each issue research team to meet up with our allies and know everything that there is for us to learn from that ally, for that partner group, and then come back and report it. We are looking for meetings to happen where, for example, the housing team will meet with, let's say, a representative staff person, expert from Housing California. And we want 3 or 4 or 5 people to be on that call, building that relationship, getting to know who is Housing California, who is that specific staff person, and also to be known, so that we sort of thicken those relationships and really have people-to-people connections, because that's what builds trust and more knowledge and competence, and it also then produces more of us as a network who can go out and talk to the people in our congregations, who can make calls to members of congregations and say, here's why we're working on this, and here's what's exciting about it, and here's some of the nuances, or here's what we're concerned about a particular bill and what we're going to be watching closely to see whether whether our position changes on it, all those kinds of things. We want more people involved, because part of our theory of change is collective leadership, is that we are trying to expand the number of people who have the experience and the competence to participate in this process of making legislative change and cultural change, right? Raising consciousness and doing the work of implementing policy changes. So the tool that we have, the basic building block of the research process, is what we call research actions. So when I thought of the word research before I was doing this work, I thought it meant going to the library, right? Research means going to the library, doesn't it? But in community organizing, right, in the kind of political work we're doing together, research means going to meet with people who work on issues. That includes our legislators, and that includes people working in nonprofits and other organizations, civic organizations, who have the experience and the information that we want, and that we want to share in talking through what do we think could be the solutions to some of the problems we're trying to address. So research actions are collective meetings with allied groups, elected officials, and other people that we think are relevant to our decision-making process. And before a research meeting, we as, meaning you as your group of people on an issue research team, if you have an upcoming research meeting, you're going to meet together as a group beforehand and think through what questions are you going to ask in that meeting. Just like you may have had the experience doing before meeting with your legislator when you're going to lobby. When you're going to do a research action, you're going to get together and think together, what questions are we going to ask so that we can assess whether the bills we're going to be talking about meet our criteria. And you're also going to decide who's going to ask which question. You're going to actually lay out what your roles are so that the meeting can be organized and flow well, and that everyone can have a way of participating. So you'll actually decide who's going to give a credential, which means who's going to explain what is RAC California and what is this issue research team. Everyone will introduce themselves, a credential will be given, and that will include things like that RAC California represents the 100 or so congregations in California, which actually comprise about 150,000 Reformed Jews. And then you'll make sure to give some testimony, meaning you'll have at least a couple of the people who are there talk about why it's important to you to be on this team, why you're working on this, maybe what's Jewish about it for you, what's personal about it for you. And then ask your questions, leave time for discussion, really learn as much as you can, listen a lot, and conclude. And after you leave and you thank the person for that meeting, you're going to have a follow-up meeting to debrief and talk about what you learned, and make sure you record it so you can share it with the network. There should always be a note taker in a meeting like this, and there might be multiple people thinking and taking notes and making sure that you cover what you learned. By February 13th, we want to have recommendations from all the issue research teams. So that's about 6 weeks away. And then the leadership team will have a chance to review the recommendations and prepare options to present to the congregations and the leaders in those congregations. So in case you don't have the dates of the issue selection webinars written down yet in your calendars, those are going to be February 27th. That's a Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. and March 1st at 9 in the morning. And you can pick either one of those to be part of. Everyone can be one of those to be part of. The same information will be presented on each of those webinars. We just wanted to give 2 options so we can get the most people involved. And we encourage you to encourage others in your congregations to participate in those webinars. After that, the leadership team will finalize the 2019 legislative agenda based on the feedback that we get following those calls. A couple more things about the research process. Lee, do you want to talk about strategic and tactical allies? Sort of 2 categories of the organizations that we work with.
Sure. I thought that was in the next section.
Oh, did I turn a page? And
You skipped a page, yeah.
I think I did. Okay, you'll get to that. Maybe that's because I came to the end of that section, though. I think I did. What I skipped was just pausing for questions. Anybody? About how the process works? I'll add that we have a number of allies in each issue area already, organizations that we've been working with. So the people leading your teams, or Lee and I as staff people, and Jacob, will let you know who those allies are that we plan to work with, and you can propose others that you might want to learn from or check in with.
Great. In the absence of questions, we'll push on. So Julie, did you go over the timeline? Maybe I will do that. So basically, each of your issue teams needs to complete your recommendations on which bills.
Yeah, I did.
All right, you did by the 13th?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that means, like in an ideal world, we would meet with everybody and every elected official and do perfect research. But unfortunately, we live in the real world. And so we have to be focused. And that's why we don't usually meet with more groups, because we only can do what we can do. It's good if you can have a first and a second choice, or if you have 2 choices that are equal, to submit that, because then we can present it to when we present it to the leaders, then when we present it to the leaders of the congregational teams, they will have a choice. We don't want to just come to them and say, here's the agenda, rubber stamp it. We actually want to give people a real choice. So picking 2 issues, 2 bills, or if you want a first choice and a second choice, is ideal for this. All right. And we hope that all of you will participate in the issue selection webinars on February 27th at 7 o'clock and March 1st at 9 a.m. And that you will get others from your congregational teams to do that. That would be great. So that's the process for choosing what our issues are. Once we choose the issue, then the research teams will help us figure out what are the actions that we should be taking to move these bills toward passage. Now, we do that again by working most with our allies. So RAC California has 2 kinds of allies. We have strategic allies and tactical allies. The strategic allies means there are multi-issue groups, and we share a long-term vision and strategy of where we're going. So our alliance goes beyond any particular campaign. And we have 2 main strategic allies, Pico, California, and California Calls, which is, Pico, California is a congregation-based group that has a very strong statewide network, unlike the Industrial Areas Foundation, another group that our congregations work with, but doesn't really have strong statewide work, doesn't have anyone in Sacramento. And then the other group is California Calls, which is a statewide coalition of community groups in communities of color who we work with. And then we have our tactical allies, and tactical allies are usually single issue, and there are allies for a particular campaign. So the ACLU is a tactical ally in criminal justice, and Housing California is our key tactical ally around housing issues, and we have those groups for each of our issue areas. So we want to check with both our strategic and our tactical allies, because and especially the ones, some of our allies are better at policy, like figuring out what should the bill look like. Some of them are better at politics and figuring out how do we win. So we want to really work with the ones that are better at the politics on helping to figure out what our strategy is. We have there is also, so for each of the bills we work on, we're part of a coalition that's working on the bill. There's also, sometimes there's like more informal coalitions, but there's also more formal coalitions. So each legislator who writes a bill and is the prime author of the bill, they're kind of in charge of it, and they appoint organizations that are considered organizational sponsors of the bills. So we want to be part of those organizational sponsor teams. So one of the things to do in your research is, if there's a bill that's emerging and you think it's a really important bill, you should start asking. I mean, you should let them know that we won't be choosing till the beginning of March officially what our bills are, but unofficially that you'd like to be part of those coalitions, because we want to be part of those coalitions. When Harry asked us, how can we make sure that we don't run into a situation again where the bill runs into trouble and we end up, getting it ends up passing something we don't like in the end. And one of the ways is by making sure we're part of the coalitions and helping to figure out the strategy, that we're a sponsoring group of the bills. So that's something to figure out. Who are the sponsoring groups and can we be part of that? So we're going to have 6 bills in our agenda. We're going to choose one of them that's our central bill. So the main difference between our central bills and our other bills is that we're asking everyone to take action on our central priority, at least a little. And it's the main thing we're going to communicate to everyone. We have learned that if we try and talk to people about too many bills, it's almost like we're not talking at all, like it's just too confusing. That people want focus, and that's the most effective way to move people to action. I don't know if any of you were in our webinar before Lobby Day last year, but if you were, you saw a really good example of presenting too many bills and creating a lot of confusion. And that's why we're really very keen on being multi-issue, but focusing. So we will do this. So that's the difference. The central priority bills, it's a communication thing. It's the main thing we will communicate to all congregations. We will ask everyone to do something. Even if immigration maybe is your congregation's #1 issue, we're not saying don't work on that if that's not our main bill. We're saying do a little bit also on our main bill, which could be around housing or gun violence or some other issue, right? And then what we're going to do for the other bills is we are in the process of finding out, well, what are the main issues that congregations are working on? And so if immigration is not our main bill, but we know that Karen Alschuler's congregation works on immigration, then the team can reach out to her congregation and say, we'd like you to take action. The congregation can say, please let us know about immigration actions, and the immigration team then will reach out to those teams. So we'll only reach out to the teams that have expressed a real interest in that. So that's how it works. Now, a key point in our effort to pass a bill is Lobby Day. How many of you have been to a Lobby Day? All right, it's if you haven't been, it's our most exciting, dynamic event. It's our biggest event of the year. It's a life-changing thing. You'll be happy to go. This year, we're setting the date way early so that people can make plans, especially if you have to travel or take the day off work. But it's going to be August 20th in Sacramento. It's the kind of thing where you get up early and you can drive or fly there, depending on where you live. And then we do something most of the day, and then we end in time for you to drive or fly back at the end of the day. So that is a date. Please write that in your calendars now. So I'd like to give Ted, are you, you're both muted and your picture's gone.
Yes, I was just having a snack, which I thought I would spare you the visuals of.
Ted, so I will say that our most effective and vital and best organized team so far has been our climate justice team. It's what all the rest of our teams aspire to and will soon reach. And thanks to the leadership of Ted and Bob Kibrick and others, but especially Ted and Bob, they have done great work. So Ted, I just wondered if you'd share a little story about what it's been like for you to participate and help lead the climate change team.
Well, I will definitely say that it's sort of been a leap of faith. There was an invitation from Lee, whatever it was, a year and a half ago or so, to lead this team. And I didn't know anyone else on the team. They were a list of unknown names to me, and yet I had never done anything. We had never clearly done anything like this before, and yet we got together on a webinar like this and picked up this, the same schedule for outreach to allied groups and getting information back to RAC-CA and kind of all, and, a name or two of an organization that was a strategic or tactical ally, and got some contacts at, got the NRDC contact, Victoria, Rome, and, I was like, who's Victoria? I've never heard of her before. She doesn't know me from Adam. And we just sort of looked at each other and said, I'll take this one, you take that one. I know going forward, we're going to break into teams. So we have multiple connections. But we all just kind of, looked at each other and said, 1, 2, 3, jump. And we all did a lot of calling and got back together again. As sort of the shepherd of the process, I did follow up. I think we gave ourselves maybe 3 weeks to do the calls. So I did a little reminding, 5 days after our initial call, and I did a little reminding 5 days before our next call. The 5 days prior to the second call was probably the most useful because about half the people had made their calls and about half hadn't. And people scrambled, and, surprisingly to me, and I think to some of us, the allies on the other side of, the phone picked up the phone and met with us and were very open, not only with, some sort of official answer about, here's the slate of what we're supporting and why, but with their uncertainties about, here's what we don't know. They were very open in our questioning to be very honest about, pros and cons of the different bills, and both in terms of the content of the bills and also the politics as best they knew them. I was particularly surprised how open they were around some of, the political calculations. And it meant that when we came back together, sort of lo and behold, we were able to shake things out and come up with a recommendation to RAC-CA. We all kind of, I don't think we acknowledged it out loud, but I certainly looked around and was like, "Oh my God, we just did that!" It was a little surprising, but also kind of delightful. And then to be able to follow it through the year and turn it into actions and really have it make a difference was, like I said, both an act of faith and kind of delightful. So I guess my big takeaway is that this can actually work, and none of us are experts. None of us are well connected politically or know Sacramento or any of that. But none of this is rocket science. There are nuances that we are not as good at as the inside baseball kind of people. But, the large outlines are all things that any one of us can get our hands on and make progress on.
So thank you, Ted and Bob and the other members of the team. You've really done a truly amazing job. And you had a disadvantage, which you were the first one, and we weren't entirely sure what we were doing. So we kind of made the road by walking. You didn't have the benefit of having a training like this or written criteria for choosing the issue or any of the things that the teams now have. So hopefully, thanks to the work of Ted and Bob and the others on their team who kind of pioneered, things are a little clearer and will be a little easier for all the other teams.
I also really want to acknowledge Debbie Coutant, who's on the call with us, who's been part of the immigration team, and who's been pushing us to take this step forward of doing training and making our issue criteria something that everyone's going to have a copy of in front of you. We're going to get all of that to you. So we'll be sending you a timeline, a copy of the criteria, dates of when everything that's coming up. So you'll have all that in one place.
And a roster of who's on your team.
Yeah. Do people have other questions? Or comments?
Julie, I want to uplift a question that Karen Alschuler put in the chat box a while ago. She says, I am still confused by the term leadership. What is the leadership that makes decisions in California or at the national level? How do we find out about the bills? Is that from the RAC California team? And I can maybe take a first stab at this. The leadership team is at the California level. The bills and ballot measures that we're working on are going to be the state level. So I hope that that helps. And again, that's the team of rabbis and lay leaders from across the state representing congregations. In terms of finding out about the bills, I think that there are two main avenues. The first, which is what we focused on this call, is that we really rely on our allies who are the issue experts to tell us about the bills, what they see coming down the pipeline, what they're planning to focus on. And then we try and learn as much from them and make recommendations to our leadership team and mobilize our congregations. The second avenue for finding out about bills, which we've talked about a few months prior but haven't really discussed on this call, is the in-district legislative meetings, where we're encouraging congregations to meet with their state legislators, both their assembly members and their state senators. And some of the questions that we're asking congregations to ask their legislators are, what do you see coming down the pipeline? What types of bills are you planning to focus on or introduce in the 2019 session? So we're trying to hear from our strategic and tactical allies and also from the legislators themselves, and put that together and see what is the legislature going to be focusing on this year. So I hope that helps, Karen, and Lee and Julie, of course, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, that all sounded great. I mean, you know, who makes the decision? And is this a top-down or a bottom-up process? And my answer to that always is the same: yes. The answer is yes. It's a top-down and bottom-up process, right? So, or to use a, dollar, what do you say? The dollar word? It's a dialectical process. So the issue teams have a lot of real influence in the decision because their research is going to guide what it's going to be the basis of which decision is going to be made. The congregational teams have a lot of influence, the leaders who come on the webinar, because we're not going to adopt something that there isn't enthusiasm in our congregations for. And the leadership team, while they're the final, like on paper, the final decision makers, their main role in this is overseeing the process and gleaning and synthesizing the information that comes from the research teams and the different issue selection webinars. So you could look at the leadership team and say, well, they have the final decision, but the way the process works, it's more complicated than that, and a lot of people weigh in. And that's the way we get the best results, is by having a process where a lot of people are involved in the decision and have a real role in it. Other questions? Do people have other questions before we wrap up? Okay, it's 8 o'clock. I'm sorry, Karen, why don't you email the question? We can follow up with you. I just want to say thank you all for making time on an evening when you could be working or being with your family or having fun. I appreciate you doing that, and I appreciate the dedication that you're going to make because you all will really be shaping what we're doing this year and our successes. And so it's the work you're doing that will make a huge difference in what RAC California accomplishes. So on behalf of all of RAC California, thank you. Learning how to do this collective research process and building collective research, learning how to work together as Ted and Bob and the members of their team had to do, will be one of the keys to success in this. And it's maybe a different way of doing things than we're used to. So learning how to do this collective research process is a real key. And Julie and I are resources, and Jacob, the three of us are resources to help you. So please use us if you have questions or confusion. And we will try and help make everything clear. And I think it's very exciting to be moving forward. So if most of the teams have set their dates for their first meeting, if your team has not, you will be set very soon because we have that deadline of February 13th. And so we need to start meeting and start our research actions. We will not have business cards to meet with legislators, but we can prepare a little sheet to leave behind if you want. We have done that before on who we are and what we do. So we'll prepare that for you for your research meetings. In fact, there's one on the website now, isn't there, Jacob? leave behind?
I think there is
Yep.
a leave behind, yes.
Yep, it's available on our website. If you go to the RAC website, scroll down and click on the RAC California link, you'll be able to find it there.
Thanks to Jacob for putting those materials together and making them available.
Well, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to the next steps, to the kickoff meetings of each of the teams, and to continue to see each other online and in person and by phone. And we are really available for when you have an idea or a question or are ready to take a next step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New
everybody.
Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Julie and Jacob, can you stand for a minute?
Sure.
Here.
Okay, just Bye, Bill. Great to see you. Hey, Bill. You're still on? You want to pop off?
No, I can't take him off. He's frozen.
Aha.
All right.
Should we end and hop back on?
I don't think he's really there.
Well, if we were to sit here and talk about Bill Shore, it would be.
Can you end the recording though?
Yeah.